Hi everyone, thanks so much. As Jen mentioned, this is the Charlotte's Web CBD Clinic webinar. I am Amanda. I will be helping to moderate the questions here at Charlotte's Web. I'm the social media manager. And then I'm also joined by Megan Syke, who is our senior business developer for CBD Clinic. She'll be here to help answer questions as well. Megan, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Syke. I lead our medical channel and happy to have such great participation today. Really excited you're joining us to understand how oral or ingestible products can be integrated into your practice. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jen. One point of housekeeping. We've got a Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen. If you've got any questions, please feel free to enter them there. Amanda and I will be moderating them and call out questions throughout the course for the team to answer. All questions are welcomed. We're here to support you. And again, thank you all.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CBD Clinic webinar today. I'm Jen Palmer. I'm the Education Director. I am a naturopathic doctor. I graduated from Bastyr University, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, I think. So I've been in the business of education and dietary supplement business this entire time. I don't have a clinical experience, so I rely on bringing in experts occasionally to talk about some clinical conditions. But today, we are just going to talk about using oral CBD in your practice. A lot of you are coming from our CBD clinic side, where you were using topicals primarily and may not have jumped into the oral part of it yet, and maybe some of you were vice versa. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you can start incorporating the oral products into as well as your topicals. So today we're going to talk a little bit super quickly about who is Charlotte's Web, and then we're going to do real briefly what is CBD and is it legal. Sometimes it seems just so basic, but then I keep meeting people who are still confused about these topics, so I realize I always have to start at the beginning, but I won't bore you with too much detail. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then we're going to talk about what to look for in a quality CBD manufacturer. I'm going to talk about testing and quality a little bit. I want to just point out a couple published studies that I like and just give you a quick review over those. To talk a little bit about CBD safety, and then share the products with you, and then we'll do a Q&A. And Megan will interrupt me if there's a question pops up that's relevant and timely. I will stop and answer that. Otherwise, we'll take them at the end. So Charlotte's Web and CBD Clinic are both really different companies, but we do have a lot in common. Both are really steeped in trust and history. We've both been in the business a really long time. I mean, Charlotte's Web is the pioneer of the CBD industry, and CBD Clinic's been around even longer. And we both have expertise in nature and science, and both are mission-based and have good supply chain excellence. Charlotte's Web really is the leading authority in cannabinoids, and we are the pioneers in CBD industry, really. We kind of got it started. And we're really focused on using the whole plant and using full spectrum hemp extracts. And we are known as the world's most trusted hemp extract, actually, through third-party surveys. And we do have really good genetics that we use consistently, so that we end up with really consistent phytochemical profiles. And so that's the story of Charlotte's Web. And CBD Clinic is really different but complementary. We are a healthcare practitioner brand, and it's sold exclusively to healthcare practitioners. We're really focused on topical products and using this level pain system for pain relief, and using active pharmaceutical ingredients. So that's our camphor and menthol, which are OTC ingredients with their own monographs that have been approved by the FDA. And CBD Clinic has been backed by 15 years of experience. And so all of those kinds of complementary factors work really well with the Charlotte's Web products, because we realize just one brand can't fit everybody. And so we really wanted to have different offerings to suit different people's needs. So super briefly, hopefully you've all heard the story of Charlotte Figge, but If you haven't, I really encourage you to go to YouTube and Google that, because there was a story from Sanjay Gupta on weeds from CNN back in the day, and he really tells the story of Charlotte so beautifully. But Charlotte had Dravet syndrome. She had intractable seizures and nothing was helping her. They tried every single medicine and nothing was helping. So her mom, Paige, was getting pretty desperate by the time Charlotte was 5. And she went out and did her own research and discovered cannabis might be a solution. Now, this was long before CBD was an industry. You couldn't go to the health food store and just purchase it. And we certainly didn't have a company at this point. But she went out and she actually networked and found the Stanley brothers, who were growing this cannabis that's really high in CBD. So long story short, they eventually let Paige try it on her daughter, and it worked beautifully. It immediately stopped the seizures. And from there, the brothers realized that they had to start a company so that they could help all of the tens of thousands of people coming to them and asking for help with their own family members. And that's how the company got started. Also at that time in 2012, Paige and another mom, Heather Jackson, were trying to help all these people coming to the Stanley brothers and asking for these products and for their family members and who were having these health problems. And so Paige and Heather were finding themselves on the phone constantly trying to answer questions and help people. And so eventually they started this Realm of Caring, which is a nonprofit organization that to this day continues to support people for free. Anyone can call them and ask for medical advice on how to use cannabis and CBD. And it's a really great resource for physicians and healthcare practitioners as well. They have an extensive library of published research. They offer trainings for physicians and healthcare practitioners to teach them about this and how to use it. And it's just a really great resource that you could recommend to your own patients and to use for yourself. So that's realmofcaring.org. So fast forward to 2020, that was a big year for us. We got our second hemp genetics patents for Charlotte's Web, and that was only the 2 of the 4 who actually were approved in the US. We sponsored a clinical trial, and we actually just put out a press release about that today. We worked with several other manufacturers in the industry to put together this consumer-facing trial to demonstrate that CBD is safe. And we were able to announce that today, and we will be publishing that research later in this year. We also achieved our self-affirmed GRAS status. I'll talk about that a little more later. And we acquired Abacus Health, which was Cbd Clinic and Cbd Medic and a couple other brands. And we achieved our B Corp certification at that time. This year already, we have ongoing clinical research with Johns Hopkins University, an arm of Harvard Medical University, Colorado State University, and several other university partners. So we're really focused on doing some research and getting that published so that we understand this plant better and we know that it's safe and effective. We also completed a over $30 million manufacturing facility, so that allows us to bring a lot more of the manufacturing process in-house so that we are fully vertically integrated and we can control every step of the process. And also we're just launching some innovative technology for removing THC from our full spectrum hemp extract, and I will be talking to you about that new product a little bit later as well. So B Corp certification, I just mentioned. If you're not familiar with this, it's really cool because B Corp certified companies are really focused on doing well in the world and being environmentally responsible, treating their workers properly, balancing profit and purpose. We really are focused on trying to be one of those good companies, and we do donate a good percentage of our profits to charities. And so we were able to get this B Corp certification status this year after many years of working on this. It was a very arduous process. We had to provide a lot of documentation to demonstrate, we are who we say we are. And only about 1/3 of the companies that attempt this process actually achieve certification. So we were really proud of ourselves for doing this, and it really shows our commitment in the long term to being a company that does good in the world. So let's jump a little bit into topic of hemp. So people might be a little confused about this. I know I was when I first started studying hemp versus marijuana. What is the difference? It's very confusing because it's actually the same thing. It's one plant, Cannabis sativa. But this cannabis plant, just like any other plant, creates a whole bunch of different phytocompounds. And not all plants have all of them. They all each have their own different phytochemical profile. So when the 2018 Farm Bill came about and made hemp legal finally in this country, they created this definition for what is hemp. And hemp, it became defined as this very arbitrary number. They said less than 0.3% THC equals hemp. And anything over that is put into the marijuana category. And we know that THC and marijuana are still Schedule I controlled substances. And so those are only allowed to be used as medical cannabis or recreational cannabis, which is only legal in a handful of states so far. But marijuana is basically everything over 0.3%, but really you're going to see that more in 20% or even 30% THC. And we all know that THC is that compound that brings about the euphoric effect, whereas CBD does not. So hemp, we know, is legal in all 50 states. But does that mean that CBD is legal? Well, this is where we get into a little bit of a gray area. So the legal status of CBD is still undetermined because the FDA so far has not fully recognized it as a dietary supplement, even though the plant is considered legal. So that's kind of left individual states to create their own rules, which is a little bit of a problem. So for the most part, most states have CBD legally available to be sold in retail. But they may have different regulatory statuses for it. They might require getting a license to sell it, or they might have different labeling requirements. It's really made it complicated in the US because we don't have consistent regulation across the board. So even though the FDA has said that this is not a dietary supplement, Charlotte's Web and most CBD companies are behaving like dietary supplement companies and following those regulations. And in our opinion, a full spectrum hemp extract with all the natural compounds in that plant is just like doing any other herbal extract from any other plant. And so therefore we feel like it should be considered a dietary supplement. So let's dive into the actual product itself. This is a full spectrum hemp extract. So that means that in our process, we are pulling out all the different compounds that are available. Now, of all the compounds available, there's up to 500 different compounds, including terpenes and essential fatty acids and different kinds of phytosterols and flavonoids. And also science has discovered that there's over 100 different phytocannabinoids. So besides THC and CBD, there's also CBC and CBG and CBN, et cetera. And so not all plants have all of these compounds, but they each have their own individual phytochemical profile. And so for us, the full spectrum hemp extract is pulling out whatever that plant has to offer. And we think that this is the best way to go because all of these compounds work together synergistically and they create the entourage effect. And we feel like that all those compounds actually give that CBD a boost and makes it more effective and more superior to CBD isolate, which does not have any other compounds supporting it. And that's why you have to take a lot more of the isolate as compared to the full spectrum to get the same benefits. So you may have heard some of these terms that are out there in the CBD industry. They're somewhat made up by marketing companies, but the full spectrum hemp extract is, as I described, everything that's involved in that plant. We're pulling it out and we're bringing it to the product. A broad spectrum hemp extract is still a little bit of a gray area and not everybody's adhering to this definition, but it technically should mean it's a full spectrum hemp extract with the THC removed. Now, the U.S. Hemp Authority recently gave a new definition to broad spectrum, And they're saying that a broad spectrum should not be formulated by the addition of multiple isolated cannabinoids. So you can't take a CBD isolate, which by the way is very cheap to get on the market, and then throw in like a CBN isolate and a CBG isolate and then call that broad spectrum. That technically should not qualify, although there probably are some products on the market that are made that way. A CBD isolate, it means simply what it says, only the CBD has been extracted, usually from the stem, which is not where there's a lot of other phytocompounds involved. And the one benefit of that is it has no THC. So if you wanted to explain to your patients, like, why is this entourage effect so important? I think the story of the orange is really compelling. So we know that getting your nutrition from whole foods is much better than getting it from isolated nutrients. So when we eat an orange, we know we're getting some vitamin C, we're getting some bioflavonoids, some anthocyanins, some polyphenols, et cetera, all these really powerful antioxidants. And even though they're not super high levels of each of them, they all work together and they have this entourage effect or synergy. So you don't need to take super high levels in order to get that antioxidant boost. But we know if we're taking vitamin C from a pill, it's just vitamin C. It's an isolated vitamin C. And that's why you get doses of 500 milligrams or 1 gram of vitamin C when you're taking it in the pill form, because you just have to take a lot more than you would if you were getting it from the orange. And that's just the same story as what we're doing with hemp. It's the full spectrum versus the isolate. So let's talk a little bit about the quality control and testing. So because the FDA, oh, go ahead, Megan.
Hey, Jen. I think you just gave a great example of the orange and how that could pertain to the entourage effect. We did have a very specific question, though. What is the entourage effect? If you could answer that in a question, in a sentence or two, that'd be great.
It's really just a synergistic effect. So you're getting more bang for your buck, essentially. You're getting a boost in that CBD activity. So whatever the CBD is doing in your body at that moment, it does a whole wide variety of things, and we have a whole nother webinar on that. But you're going to get a little more efficaciousness out of it when you have those other compounds supporting it. And that's really the terpenes and the phytocannabinoids. They're kind of all acting together on different receptors and helping the body essentially create balance throughout and balance wherever is needed in the body. So did that help a little bit?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'll see if Josh asks a follow-up question and let you know.
No problem. Okay, and so back to our quality control. So Charlotte's Web is made on small American family farms. They're growing our own plant genetics that we are providing to them. And so it's really important to have American grown hemp, in my opinion, because we really want to make sure that the quality is being controlled. Now, we have always practiced organic farming practices all throughout, but now we're finally USDA certified organic, which is really important, all the way from our plants to the finished product. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So we've always had this practice of using manual weed control, crop rotation, things like that to make sure our soil is really healthy. Regenerative agriculture is the new term right now, and that's kind of what we've been doing the whole time without calling it that. So we're making sure we have healthy soil and clean soil, because the hemp plant is a phytoremediator and it literally sucks up all the toxins and junk that's in the soil. And it's a great cleaner of the soil, but you don't want all that stuff to be in the plant that you're then concentrating and extracting. So starting with clean soil is really important, and we really avoid using herbicides and pesticides. Even the organic ones, for the most part, we rarely ever have to use those because we have these really hardy plant genetics that are really adapted to whatever location they're being grown in. And so we rarely have to use herbicides and pesticides unless there's something really major event environmentally going on. So growing your own plants, that's not really something that happens in this industry very often. Most manufacturers, they're going to the open market where they're kind of getting, like a hemp broker, and they're getting hemp plants from all over the place, from different farmers with different genetics. So you can still make a good quality extract that way, But the problem is that, when you do one batch, you're going to get a certain phytochemical profile in the end. And maybe that works great for your patients and you love it and it's really useful. And then the next time they go and buy it, it's a different batch from different plants and it has a completely different phytochemical profile. So you're not going to get the same results. So we felt like it was really important to have consistency from lot to lot. Part of that is because, we were helping Charlotte in the beginning and we made her medicine with a certain way, with certain plants in a certain process, and it worked for her. And then when one time they tried to tweak it a little bit and they did something different and we found out it didn't work for her anymore. So we realized how important it was to have this phytochemical profile be consistent from batch to batch, because we knew people like Charlotte were taking this and they were sensitive, and if something worked for them, they needed to make sure they could get that every single time. So we are very specific about the genetics that we're growing. And the plants that we grew for Charlotte, those original genetics we continue to use in that specific product. And then we have modified our genetics slightly to adapt to certain growing areas. And then we keep those genetics very consistent. They're still related to the original ones, but they're slightly tweaked. And we're making sure that we get consistent results from batch to batch. Another thing that we're doing, we're setting our own high standards. Because the FDA has not published any regulations for CBD companies, they're really left on their own to do whatever they want. And so we have actually adhered to the highest cannabis testing standards that are, I think, they're developed in California for their medical cannabis program. And so we test for what they test for, which is over 60 pesticides. That's a lot. Over 20 solvents, 4 heavy metals, and microbiological contaminants, all in that final extract. And we also do a lot of testing back on the farm. So we start from the soil and the water, and we test for that, for the nutrients and contamination. And we're testing our hemp potency as it's growing, so we know, the optimal time to harvest it and get the maximum amount of CBD. And we're also testing the plant for mold and aflatoxin to make sure, it's healthy and clean. And all of those tests can be seen on our C of A, and you can go to that website on our charlottesweb.com, and you can put in the lot number that's at the bottom of your bottle, and it will show you this. This is the C of A that you'll see for that particular batch that you bought on your bottle. And so as you can see, it shows you the amounts of the other phytocannabinoids, the amount of THC, shows you the microbiological, and then we've consolidated the results for the solvents and the heavy metals and the pesticides, just because it's a very laborious process with testing coming from different places. So we just manually put those all together there. But in the future, we will be able to show you all the exact tests. It's just been a very expensive process to get that kind of functioning going. But if you do want to know all the tests that we, for pesticides that we do, we can help you and get you that list. So on top of, creating our own high quality standards, we want these third parties to go in and verify and let consumers know that we are doing what we say we're doing. So the biggest one and most recent one is we're USDA organic certified for all of our tinctures. And so we've been going through this process for about 3 years now, and we finally just finished the last phases. And that means that not only our farming, but all the steps of our manufacturing are certified organic now. We are US Hemp Authority certified, which is a third party that's kind of created standards for the industry, and they go in and audit us every single product, and they confirm that we are doing what we say we are doing. And we're able to put that US Hemp Authority logo on our packaging, which I think is a really helpful thing for consumers to be able to see on the bottles, because then they know that this is good quality hemp. Otherwise, they're kind of left in the dark and they have to trust what the company tells them. We're also self-affirmed GRAS, meaning we've done all the toxicology studies and safety studies with third-party entities reviewing that. We can't be real grass right now because the FDA hasn't acknowledged us as a dietary supplement, but basically we've done all the steps involved with that. So the moment that the FDA gives us the nod, we have all those documentations for them. We're also GMP certified through NSF. So we follow good manufacturing process. That's a big deal in this industry. And again, not a requirement. It is a requirement for dietary supplements, but not for CBD companies. So we've gone above and beyond there. And then we're in various industry organizations to help support them as they support the CBD industry. So I wanted to jump into just a couple studies. Now this one is maybe not the most impressive, but I thought it was really interesting because it just came out. And I thought it was interesting as clinicians. They did this study in the UK, and it was really just a survey, and they asked both clinicians and patients about how effective is CBD for pain. And so it's interesting, the majority of the patients said that they got really good relief from pain from using cannabinoids. This is either cannabis or CBD. They weren't super clear about it, but there was a lot of probably more likely CBD. So the patients said, I use it and I like it and it works. But 78% of the practitioners believe cannabinoids did not help pain, even though their patients were getting good relief. So that just kind of shows you this dichotomy of doctors aren't really super educated on this, and they don't really understand how it works, and therefore they don't necessarily believe in it. So I think it's just a good reason why we all need to kind of open our eyes to this and give it a chance and listen to our patients. One of the things we know that CBD is really good for is occasional anxiety, and there's actually several studies on anxiety. So I like this one. It's a case study review, so it wasn't a controlled clinical trial, but we'll take it. It's still really meaningful. So because it wasn't a controlled trial, there wasn't a placebo and there wasn't like a designated amount everybody was taking, but it was more real life. And so these were patients who actually were in a psychiatric hospital. So some of them were taking psychiatric medicines as well. And they were really struggling with anxiety and sleep disruption. And so they were taking CBD capsules anywhere from 25 milligrams to 175 milligrams a day for up to 3 months. So they were tracking people's sleep and anxiety scores over this time. And they found that the CBD really helped them improve their anxiety and really helped reduce their stress. And they had really good improvement in sleep for the first month. Now, it was interesting because they noticed that over time after that, the anxiety continued to stay lower and the CBD stayed helpful with that, but they didn't see as big of improvement in their sleep disruption over time. So that was kind of an interesting insight in that. Now, these were most likely taking a CBD isolate. Unfortunately, most of the research is on CBD isolates, which I think is a real drawback. But in my opinion, taking a full spectrum hemp extract, they would have gotten a little bit better results with that. So I think there's just more to prove about the full spectrum going forward. Then there was another study. This one was to talk about how CBD can support healthy lifestyle changes. So this was a clinical trial, and they had parallel groups. One group was taking CBD, the other was taking placebo, and they wanted to measure mental wellness and stress resilience. So they had 65 people who were overweight, but otherwise healthy men and women. And they gave one group 15 milligrams of CBD soft gel, and the other group got placebo. So these people followed their normal diet, and they added in a routine of low intensity exercise. So they got 30 minutes of walking exercise 5 days a week. So nothing major, but just something to get them moving. And so what they found was that just only in the CBD group, they had really good decrease in appetite. They had big improvements in sleep quality and quantity, about 20%. And they had improved pleasure from life. And in the end, the researchers concluded that the 6 weeks of CBD supplementation helps improve sleep quality and quantity and balance appetite and enhances quality of life as compared to placebo. So I'd like to just quickly review our products in case you've never seen them. First of all, we are organic certified, super exciting. Again, we are organic certified from the farms all the way to the manufacturing process. So it's no easy task to achieve this. Right now, just our original formula and our other tinctures are organic certified. And then throughout the year, all the other products will slowly be incorporated into that. So first of all, the original formula. This one's a favorite, especially among the people that work at Charlotte's Web, a little bit because this is the one that Charlotte took. This is how the company started. And it really has like a different benefit than this CO2 extract, which is how all the other products are made. So this one has 50 milligrams of CBD per milliliter. This is a full spectrum hemp extract, of course, and it's pulling out all the phytocompounds that the plant has to offer. So this is unique in the industry because we're doing an alcohol extract, and there really aren't very many other manufacturers doing it that way. So what we're doing, we're using alcohol to extract all the compounds from the plant. Then we are pulling the alcohol out of the product. So this is not like a standard herbal tincture where the alcohol is still in the final product. We actually pull it out, and then we replace that with a carrier oil. So we're going to put in coconut oil or olive oil because CBD is very lipophilic, and it really works best when used with fat. In fact, it's even better when you use it with a little bit of fatty food at the same time. We test the end product to make sure there's no residual alcohol, down to like 0.000 something. And then we are finding that it has a higher concentration of terpenes in the end. And that's compared to our CO2 extraction methods, which I'll show you next. So you're going to get a little bit different health benefits when you have different phytochemical profiles. So this comes in olive oil and a mint chocolate. The mint chocolate's in the coconut oil base. And the flavor is a very earthy flavor, or hempy flavor, we call it. It has that very organic flavor, and it's maybe not palatable to everyone. It might take a little bit of time to get used to it. And it comes in 3 sizes, and it's gluten-free and non-GMO. So the 60 milligram, this is our CO2 extract, which also comes in other levels as well. So we know that supercritical carbon dioxide extraction is very common, very eco-friendly, very green way to make an extract. It's becoming very popular in the herbal industry as well. So that carbon dioxide is used for this. The carbon dioxide can actually be recycled and reused. And it's a great way to do large batches of extracts. So this is our highest level of CBD per serving. So you're getting 60 milligrams per ml. And the taste is a little bit smoother. It's less hempy flavor. And it has a nice variety of phytocannabinoids and just a little less terpenes than the original formula. This comes in 3 flavors: mint chocolate, lemon twist, and orange blossom, all in that coconut oil base. And just so you know, the 60 milligrams per mil, we will have new graduated droppers so that they're marked and you can more accurately measure them. But right now, basically, you're doing 2 squeezes on the dropper. You're getting 2 half mils, and that will give you the 60 milligrams of CBD. So it gets a little bit confusing to your patients. You need to kind of explain to them 2 dropperfuls equals 60. And this is a really great way to get started because you can adjust the amount that people are starting with and start them low and then kind of gradually increase how much they're taking. I like tinctures because they give you that customizability. And sometimes it takes a little while for people to get used to the taste, but I think it's worth it in the end. So just quick review, the original formula, 50 milligrams versus 60 milligrams in the CO2 one. Original formula is the alcohol extract, which is removed and recycled. The original has double the amount of terpenes, and this is using the exact same plant genetics that we started the company with that Charlotte had been using. And so the 60 milligram has a broader variety of terpenes, but not as high of a quantity. And it's also using regionally stable proprietary genetics that were very closely related to the original ones, but tweaked slightly so that they're really hardy for whatever environment that they're grown in. And that CO2 extract that I described, that's in all the other products in Charlotte's Web. So it's in our gummies and our capsules, and even in our topicals.
Jen,
So,
just before we move on, we had a question. You started talking about droppers and dosing. One of the questions is, when using a full spectrum product versus an isolate, how do we gauge the proper dosage? When the full spectrum product is more effective, it seems you will need less. When treating pain, what dosage do you recommend? So lots of questions within that, but could you highlight just how we suggest getting started with 30 days?
Yeah, I wouldn't compare it to the isolate. I mean, hopefully your patient's not taking an isolate, but if they are, just kind of scratch that and start over. We recommend starting low. So you might want to start with, if it's somebody brand new to CBD, you might want to start them with 20 milligrams a day of our full spectrum. And then after, a few days, as time goes on, you can increase it slowly. And so whatever benefit you're trying to get to, once they start to feel better, then that's the amount that they need. Now, I know that sounds really vague, but the reality is it's very different for everybody. It's based on genetics, your weight, your metabolism. Everybody's different. How much endocannabinoids is your body already making? So you really need to customize it for each person. I would say the average, we've collected and looked at a lot of data. The average amount is 50 milligrams a day, but people with, bigger medical conditions or, more severe situations, they might be taking 100 or even 200 milligrams a day. The thing is, I find that people don't really need to stay on those high levels long term, except in certain situations, because it seems to kind of restore your endocannabinoid system over time. So a lot of people are able to take breaks after a while, and then they continue to feel good for quite a while. It does kind of store up in your system, and it does get your endocannabinoid system going. So it's not something that you maybe necessarily have to take the rest of your life.
And Jen, I'll add to what you said. If you're a practitioner who's looking to start with Charlotte's Web products, as Jen highlighted, two are 50 meg and 60 meg. We really do advise on tincture, starting with either one of those for a 30-day regimen to hone in. But if you have somebody who prefers capsules, we also have capsules. Once you find that incremental dose, you can then tailor it as well to the patient that you've got.
Yeah, I think it's hard to start with a capsule because you just can't control it that much. But obviously people like it for convenience, but really try to get them on the tinctures first. I really think that's the best way to go. And some people just do better with tinctures versus capsules. There's different preferences. So going back to our different products. So this full spectrum hemp extract has a little THC. I told you it's got 0.3% or less. So people ask, can a patient test positive in a drug test if they're taking this little bit? Well, reality is, yes, you can. It depends on how much you're taking, your metabolism, your weight, et cetera, how long you're taking it. But yes, you can still test positive using this full spectrum hemp extract. So if you have patients who are in professions that are very drug test forward, and they like people in medicine or people in the military or police, they have to be really careful, and they can lose their job if they test positive in THC tests. Now, we really want to help those people, though, because they tend to be in really high-stress jobs and they need CBD. And so we wanted to be able to reach them as well. So we created a new product. And this is our Thc Free Tincture. This one actually has a little bit of sweetener in it, a little monk fruit, so it tastes different. But it's the mint chocolate flavor. And this is something that can be used safely by people who have to undergo regular drug testing. Now, when we say THC free, that technically means it has less than 0.01% or 100 parts per million. So remember, hemp has less than 0.3%, and this is less than 0.01%. Now, I saw the certificate of analysis for our first batch of THC free, and we are at 0.004%. So really hard to even detect it at that point. So very, very low, almost no THC. But legally, we have to say there's that amount. So one thing that's cool about our THC free, it's not just any old regular broad spectrum hemp extract. We had to create some proprietary technology that's more high tech and does a better job of pulling out that THC without stripping out all the other good compounds that hemp has to offer, which is what a lot of the other processes do in order to create a broad spectrum or THC free product. So we use a very eco-friendly process. We use reusable ethanol and supercritical CO2 for that post-extraction refinement to pull out the THC. And then we inject it into a column to filter out the THC. And that's the different thing that we do that's unique. We call this supercritical fluid chromatography. So this proprietary technology it's not very different from the science experiment you may have done in elementary school, where you try to take really dirty water and you put it through a sand filter, and the sand collected all the sediment and particles, and you came out with this, much cleaner water. That's kind of what we're doing in our process. So we're really proud of having an eco-friendly step. And it's more selective for the THC, so we're able to leave more of those good compounds in the final product without using any petroleum-based solvents. We are constantly finessing this technique, and it's getting better and better. So our next batch will be even better, and then the next batch will be even better. But we're already starting with something pretty good to start with. So some of the alternatives to our cool new technology are these four things. So one step is people are using petroleum-based solvents instead of that filter that we're using. And so obviously you don't want petroleum-based solvents in the product or even any residue of that, because that can accumulate over time. Some companies are using flash chromatography. This uses up a ton of energy and creates a whole bunch of waste. And it also strips out more of those beneficial compounds than our SFC technology. Another way that people pull out the THC is they use this destructive approach. So you probably have heard that THC, as it ages, converts naturally to CBN. Well, they can actually speed up that process by using heat. And so what they're doing is they're converting the THC to these other compounds, but it also is turning it into other things like delta 6 or delta 10 THC. And those are things that, first of all, we don't know if they're safe to be consumed. And also, they still could be potentially detected in a drug test because there's THC compounds. And so they really can't guarantee a person wouldn't fail a drug test. Another approach is a very cheap approach, which is basically diluting the product so that it lowers the THC levels over time. And then they add in a bunch of CBD isolate, but they're also minimizing the amount of cannabinoids and terpenes in that process. So really, it's going to end up looking like a CBD isolate or a CBD distillate instead of a full spectrum without THC, which is kind of the problem with most of these. So these are the ways that we know other competitors are getting rid of their THC. And in the end, they're not really getting a true full spectrum minus THC product. They're getting something that really is closer to a CBD isolate. And then just real super quickly, we have a 17 milligram per milliliter oil. We've got two different capsules. One is 15 milligrams, the other one's 25 milligrams. These are vegetarian capsules, hard shell, not soft gel, which breaks down. And then we have our gummies, which are top selling products. They're really effective. Our sleep gummies are actually the #2 selling product in the category of sleep in the natural channel out of everything. And those are delicious, raspberry flavored. They also have 3 milligrams of melatonin and 10 milligrams of CBD. They work like a charm. We have our calm gummies and our recovery gummies, and all of these really taste awesome and they're really popular. So we don't have time to go into this because it's really its own whole, 3-day event. And we'll bring in our pharmacist again sometime to talk about it. But people want to know, is CBD safe with medications? So the reality is CBD gets metabolized by cytochrome P450 in the liver enzyme, just like drugs and alcohol and medicines and herbal supplements can be. So obviously they can interact with these liver enzymes. So yes, it's possible that CBD can interact with certain medications, just like we know grapefruit juice can. So it's good to look into that and do some research. It's not a simple task, unfortunately. So I really recommend downloading this booklet, projectcbd.org, that link at the bottom there. It's a really comprehensive free booklet, and it goes through and explains all the different enzymes that CBD works on and what the different medications may work with. And in some cases, you may have to increase the amount of medicine to compensate for the CBD. In some cases, you lower the amount of medications to compensate for the CBD. So there's really no like one size fits all on that. So it's really good to do that research or consult with a pharmacist who knows something about this, which unfortunately there aren't a ton of pharmacists who are really learning about CBD, so you're really kind of going to have to do that research on your own. But you can figure out a way to adjust so that you can do both the medication and get the benefit for CBD.